welcome to the Startup Grind.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to tonight. How many people in the room actually know about Citizinvestor? Sweet. Okay. Well, the rest of you are going to learn.
Literally.
So that's really cool. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tony and Jordan. This is the first time we've ever actually done a tag team deal here. So Jordan, I'm going to read you the little quick bio, and then we'll talk a little bit more about who they actually are. So Jordan's an entrepreneur who spent his career using technology to solve problems in politics and government. Prior to co-founding Citizinvestor, Jordan served as the client director for Engage Marketing, where he led online fundraising for some of the most premier campaigns in the US. In 2010, Jordan and the team on Voting Information Project led Foursquare's first I Voted badge and data visualization. Jordan has twice been honored as a Google Fellow. Tony DeSisto is an attorney with a wealth of experience working in municipal governments. He's the vice chairman of the City of Tampa's Citizen Budget Advisory Committee, where he served since 2011. It was his experience on the committee which led him to co-found Citizinvestor, an alternative way to fund civic projects. Tony is also the author of Economics Island and has served on numerous boards and committees for state and local government. So what Citizinvestor is, as I put in the thing, it's not your mom and dad or your grandma's crowdfunding platform. It's a little bit different that's out there. So their goal is to create a civic engagement platform for local government projects where citizens are empowered to actually invest in their community for real change. That's actually the reason I asked them to be here, because just so you guys know, we funded a hackathon here last year in 2 weeks?
Yeah, something like that.
Using the platform. And I looked at the projects that are on there and stuff, and I just think what they're doing is pretty amazing. So it's an interesting thing. So talk a little bit, and you guys can kind of tag team back and forth, about the company itself and why you decided to do this.
Yeah, so good question, the latter. I still don't know. So Citizinvestor, like Joyce, thank you again for asking us to be here on your birthday. But Citizinvestor is a crowdfunding and civic engagement platform for local government projects, right? So we partner directly with municipal governments, starting to go outside of municipal governments, really any government entity that has projects that they'd like to take on, but they don't have the budget for, right? We're trying to solve the perennial problem, which is government never has enough funding to provide every project and service that citizens want. So government entities come to Citizinvestor and they pose these projects where citizens can donate tax deductibly to the projects of their choice. And then once the project reaches 100% of its funding goal, everyone's credit card is charged at once, and the project gets built. The park gets built, the playground gets installed, the pool gets renovated. So although Tony accuses me of taking credit for this idea all the time, I'm kidding. Is really. Yeah, no, he really does accuse me all the time. It was Tony's experience on the budget committee here in Tampa that really led to the formation of Citizinvestor. So I think he's probably a little more qualified to talk about why in the world we decided to do this.
Yeah, that's a good lead in. Yeah, I mean, it was that experience on the budget committee. So it was seeing that, specifically in Tampa, but this is a problem that all cities have, that there was all of these great projects that the city wanted to do that the community really supported, that the community wanted to see, but there was never, the funding necessary to get these projects off the ground. Specifically here in Tampa, there was a pool project that, individuals in the community, neighborhood associations went out and raised the money for, right? It was great. You're seeing community support helping to build projects that the city can't do. Now, the way they were doing this and the way it has been done generally across the country is, door to door, or collecting cash at a neighborhood association, or bake sale, which are great. That's great community support. But we were trying to find a way to make it more secure and more scalable for put this process online, and that's sort of where the idea for Citizinvestor came about.
Okay, cool. I want to give you guys a chance a little bit to talk about that, and now I want to ask you some questions about yourselves and kind of becoming an entrepreneur. So, how did you decide to become an entrepreneur? I mean, you're a lawyer, right?
Yes.
And you're a media guy.
So
how did this work out?
He decided he hated being a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking a lot about this the other day, because I think there are a lot of people who don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs, right?
Sure.
But they are, right? It's just a fancy sounding French word that we use to describe people who have a desire to create value. Right, and I think at the end of the day, that's really all entrepreneurship is. I was a really weird kid. I knew in the 8th grade. Yeah, is Mark here, by the way? Mark's not here. So Mark Sharp, who's now the chairman of the county commission, was my 8th grade American government teacher. And yeah. Wow. So this is really dating Mark.
Somebody tweet that to Mark right now.
Yeah, exactly. Please tweet at
Mark Sharp FL right now.
But when I was in the when I was in the 8th grade, this was in the middle of the 2000 election, right? This is the primary battle between John McCain and George W. Bush, and I was fascinated by politics. And since the 8th grade, I was like, I'm going to be a political operative. I'm going to run campaigns and run for president of the United States. I did not have an issue with confidence at all. So I kind of stayed on that path. And my first real job, was when I was 17. Mark asked me to run his campaign for county commission. And I agreed. I stayed home from college for a semester. And I loved it. And at the time, I thought it was because I loved politics. But like looking back on it, it's not that I love politics. I just loved starting things and winning. Right, and looking back on it, like that's all entrepreneurship is, right? There's something very entrepreneurial about campaigns. So I don't know when I made the decision that I want to be an entrepreneur. I started my first company a couple years after college, which was acquired in 2011. But looking back on it, it was really just that innate desire to want to build things and create things. So I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it's a good question.
All right.
Tony, so what's your favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur? Because it's definitely a different twist for you.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, I think for me it wasn't a choice to be an entrepreneur. It was a choice that there was this idea that I really want to see come to fruition. I think that's where having Jordan as a co-founder really helped with that experience and getting that idea from just this is something we should do to actually getting it implemented. With my law career, I had my own practice, so I was working on my own. But I think really the creation element, right? The being able to take something that started as an idea, then turned into a user story of what we wanted to see, and then actually seeing it come to fruition, right? Seeing a site that people are using that's actually helping people invest in their community. That's something that you don't get, that I didn't get being a lawyer, helping write a contract or something. There's something I'm actually seeing, and it's making a difference, which is really an important aspect to what we're doing.
But sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can I just add to that? I would just say, like,
Clean up my answers.
That's exactly what I was saying. I think one of the important things about Tony's story is something that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make a mistake of, right? Tony didn't sit in a room one day and say, you know what, this morning I woke up, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to lock myself in this room until I come up with an idea for a startup. And I see that a lot, right? Tony didn't choose to be an entrepreneur. Tony saw a massive problem and an opportunity to fix that problem. And the problem is what launched him into being an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of times it's the reverse for people, and I think that could be dangerous. So.
But don't you think that real entrepreneurs, it does happen that way, that there's some sort of burning passion for something, they see something and they're like, I've really got to address this. Yeah. Whatever that is. I mean, it's different for everybody, but I think that's true entrepreneurship right there, whatever it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the best companies are built out of solving real problems, right? I think if a problem is real, you can't ignore it. It is glaring at you in the face, and you can't kind of shake it out of your head. So yeah, I would agree.
So how did you guys meet each other?
Why is it Mark here? I thought Mark was coming.
I was wondering, was it on Mark's campaign? Was that how you guys met?
Sort of. Kind of. Yeah. So I think we've told 8 variations of the story. Yes. I think we've come to a consensus on how we met. So
you just didn't remember meeting me the first time. It was really
it's
really heartbreaking to me.
Right.
So, but now that I've cleaned it up, you can.
Are there? Somebody needs to start a startup for co-founder counseling. Marriage counseling, huge industry.
I think there's somebody here who could help with that.
Co-founder counseling. Can figure that out. So I was flying to New Hampshire in January of 2008, kind of still on the political path of my career. It was my last semester. It was the beginning of my last semester of college at Florida State. And I was flying up with Mark Sharp, to Manchester to volunteer for John McCain for a week. All right, we were going up into this truly bootstrap campaign. I mean, the McCain campaign was in shambles at this point. It was starting to take off in New Hampshire. And when Mark and I, when I got on the ground, I guess Mark was there before me. I can't really remember. I called Mark and I was trying to meet up with him at the airport. He's like, hey, just an FYI, this guy named Tony might be crashing with us, with the words he used, in our hotel room. I was like, cool. And I actually don't think you did end up staying in our hotel room, but we met in New Hampshire. So we were both working for the McCain campaign for a week. So it was really our, love of politics and kind of the allure of the romanticized bootstrap political campaign that kind of both took us to New Hampshire, and we met there, but we really
I was going to say, we met there, but then it was sort of just through campaigns, intermingled. We didn't really know each other very well. We were more mere acquaintances. Mark's congressional, couple-month congressional campaign that I was managing, they were doing the media work on, and so we kind of talked a little bit there. But it was really, when when sort of this idea percolated of, this is something I have to do, the first person I thought of, even though we weren't friends, was Jordan, because he was the smartest person I knew, doing technology and doing
Don't let his head get
startups.
Bigger.
And and so that, and I went to him, and so our friendship really grew from that moment. It was more, starting from our first discussion of Citizinvestor.
So I have a question. So when you look around, you guys always refer to yourselves as co-founders. There's no hierarchy anywhere in that, right? So is that some ploy? Is it real? Is it a secret you can't tell us? Is there a CEO of this company?
Tone?
No, I mean, I think it's wow. I think it's yes, I can give you a long, detailed drafted agreement. No, I mean, it is. I think that's how we operate. I think that's been one of our points of success. We have different things part of it is we have very different things that we are strong at, right?
Sure.
To say I'm not technically strong is an understatement, right? But there's things, especially with the domain knowledge of dealing with cities that I work really strongly with. And I think because our relationship is so strong, it's the structure that works best for us. So
Because you guys are work husbands.
That's right. Exactly. Startup spouse.
Yeah.
Startup
All
spouse.
right.
Yeah.
So our spouses?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Tony, how does being on the Florida Boxing Commission play into this?
I just think it's really cool, so I put that in things. It really
Are you a
doesn't have that
boxer?
much. No, I'm not. I'm a big boxing fan. I would love to. I've always been a huge boxing fan. I always said I'd want to do it. And then I realized that it means like getting punched in the face, and so I'd much rather just
It's
be
not
on.
much different
I'd much
than
rather
being
be
a
on the
startup.
commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't
so.
that like being a startup?
Yeah.
Actually, one of the guys, I can't remember who the entrepreneur
Sure,
is
metaphorically,
right now, but no, he says it's actually like getting punched in the face
Yeah.
on a continual basis.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's another one that says something about it's like chewing on glass, and you just get used to the taste of your own blood, those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah.
So.
There's the roller. I think the thing with the being a start founder is the roller coaster more than anything. The ups and downs are so extreme.
Sure.
It's I think Jordan talks about that a lot, but it's
we were at a panel. We were asked to speak at this event that we had no business being at in New York. For the Guardian was hosting. It was an unbelievable event, and Zach. What's Zach's name? Zach Sims?
Galifianak?
No. The CEO of Code Academy. I think it's Zach Sims. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Big fan of his. Anyways, doesn't matter. The moderator was asking him, because he's a young entrepreneur, he's probably 26, 27, like what's like the one lesson you would have for other young entrepreneurs? And I thought his advice was like spot on. It goes to what Tony was saying. If you're overly emotional, don't be an entrepreneur. And I think, my wife is here tonight, Kara, hi. And she will attest to the fact that I'm the emotional one of our relationship. So it's really hard for me. Like, I would say that that's my biggest disadvantage of being an entrepreneur. I'm a very emotional person, and in a startup, you go from the highest heights to the lowest lows in a matter of minutes and hours.
Emotional technology, that's a crazy oxymoron, dude. That doesn't happen.
I know.
Like
I know,
engineers
right?
are like a little pragmatic guys.
Yeah. So that's definitely the hard part. It feels like getting hit in the face, I guess. But other than that,
So
boxing
Tony's the
commission.
calm one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, hard to
All
believe.
right.
Hard to believe.
So how do you guys deal with, so one of the questions I would ask, right, and I know kind of how I've dealt with this over the time, but when you disagree, right? Because you are very different, right? So you're not always going to agree. I think you have respect for each other. How do you guys deal with disagreements in business?
I'll say my answer. Then when you disagree, you
Right.
can say
Yep.
your answer. I think it's. I think it goes back to. I think we trust each other in our spheres, right? I think going back to the last answer, we have definite spheres that we operate in, and I can't think of a time where one of us hasn't, if there's a disagreement that the person who's sort of that's their expertise hasn't sort of won the day on whatever the disagreement was. So it really hasn't been an issue.
No,
actually,
really,
which
it
is
honestly
surprising.
hasn't.
Because
It is surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I would just echo what Tony says. Anything with regards to domain expertise in local government, with regards to anything legal, I do challenge Tony on just to ask what I think are smart questions, but he knows are really dumb questions. But at the end of the day, I'm always defaulting to Tony on those things.
But he doesn't beat you up for that.
He doesn't, thankfully.
That's
He's
good.
very good, very good. So.
So I want to talk a little bit about you guys, because I know both of
Yeah.
you. But one of the things I think that's interesting about Citizinvestor and kind of probably how your partnership is together is the core values piece, right? So I'm going to give you guys, if you haven't ever looked at their website, I'm just going to give you the high level. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But love where you live, be audacious, be disciplined, be self-aware, have transparency. And this is interesting. Not lying is not enough. True transparency is in the best interest of everyone, from customers to employees to partners. Live generously, always be learning. For good, for profit. Profit and social impact are not mutually exclusive. We believe the best way to create real change is by creating new value in the marketplace. So how much of that do you guys live every day, and how much of it is a part of what you're building?
That's a good question. So anyone who's read Built to Last by Jim Collins knows where this concept of core values come from. And I read the book sometime last summer. Tony and I are both avid readers, and I came into the office one day. I was like, we have to do this. Like, we have to go through this process of defining what our core values are as a company. And it took us a while to do it. And I think partially because you don't think of defining core values of a company when you're a startup, right?
Sure.
And it wasn't really until I reread in the book, that the Sony founders, at the very beginning, before they even started building a product, defined the core values of the company. I thought that was so inspiring. Coming out of the wake of World War II Japan, right? Sat down and said, what is this company going to stand for the next 100, 200 years? And one of the things that Jim Collins recommends is something should not be a core value for you unless you are living it personally.
Correct.
And it's got to be a core value for you today, not what you want to aspire to be in the future. So I don't think we live all of those perfectly, but I think we live them enough to where we are comfortable saying that these are core to who we are as a company, but also who we are as founders today. And obviously, we aspire to be better at those things, at those core values in the future.
So, I mean, I think that I agree with you.
Yeah.
We're imperfect human beings. I mean,
Right.
no one is going to be perfect every
Sure.
day. As you're bringing people on, because you guys have other people that you're bringing into the company now, do you think that having that out there and really putting that up front sets a different level of expectation for people coming into the organization?
Yeah, I think it does. And I'd go one further. We were very surprised when we first did this process. And it was a pretty...
It was
hard.
intense.
Jordan's a more, the be disciplined one is definitely more Jordan than myself. And he has, the process we set up, which was really valuable because we went through a lot of variations of this and what it meant. And like you mentioned, are we living them? Is it something that we are doing right now, but also something that, in 20 years when this company is doing this, but other things, are these still going to be core values for us, right? It was very important. What we were surprised by was the reaction we got from outside. Right, so from Citizinvestor community members, because we sent it around to our user base, right? We published it. We wanted this to be public. It's not just internal for us. It's for everyone. This is what we represent. And I think it really helped people who are already, maybe supportive of Citizinvestor or fans of what we were doing, to really say, that's what they're about. So there was a big impact on how people viewed us as a company, which I think was an important part of putting those out there.
But I also think in terms of future stuff, that's actually one of the questions. I think there were like 8 questions that we had to test every single core value by. And one of them was, would we not hire somebody if they didn't exhibit this core value? And that was one that I think there were 1 or 2 core values that we said, yeah, we would still hire them if they didn't have this core value, but that we included anyways. Yeah. But most of them we did. We said, yeah, we wouldn't hire somebody if they weren't living generously, if they weren't actively giving of their time, their money, their energy for the good of others. Like that's something that we think is core to who we are and who the company is, right? So, and it's been interesting. We hired a round of interns right after we published those. Sure. And I was shocked at how many of them like brought up the core values, and we even asked questions about the core values. Like, it's kind of mean. We were like, so when's the last time you were generous? Like, give us an example of like when you were generous. But it was good. I think it's been a good tool for us. And like Tony said, I think it turned our customers, I think it turned our users, it turned our company into their cause, which was fascinating to us. Like that was not our intent. It was not our expectation. But it's kind of like it almost felt like a political campaign for a minute, right? Like harking back to our political background. It's like, oh, like people are almost treating us like a candidate. Like this is bizarre, right? It's like, oh, we stand with citizens. Like what? So it's been cool. It's been really cool. Yeah.
So one of the other things, right, in looking at this as we go forward, talk a little bit about funding the venture. So I'm gonna read a tweet that you tweeted out, right?
Oh gosh.
So Jordan said, it's good.
Good.
I didn't think
Was it on Jordan's Twitter?
Yeah,
I don't want to answer for it. If it was on his personal
I didn't think
Twitter,
anything would humiliate anyone on purpose. Okay.
Good.
I don't think anyway. 38% of startups raise capital from friends and family. Lesson: pray for wealthy friends and family. Best advice I ever heard about raising capital from investors: if they don't tell you yes, they're telling you no. So talk a little bit about how you guys have funded your venture so far, and kind of what your viewpoint is on fundraising.
Okay, there's a lot in that.
I know.
Where should we start?
I'll let you go first.
Of course you will. This is, by the way, the first time Tony and I have ever done this together. Usually I keep Tony hidden in the office. Yeah.
We're working on changing that though.
He's earned his way out. So I first want to tell a story that I think is that we find funny looking back on, and then I'll talk about friends and family because I do think that's important. So, and the story is related to that piece of advice that we got, that if they're not telling you yes, they're telling you no. So Tony and I were in San Francisco. This is actually right before we launched. This is a couple weeks before we launched. Yeah. And we decided to go out and try to test the waters of for investors, right? There are not a lot of investors who are investing in civic technology companies, and the ones who are in the Valley. So we went out there for a week and had a bunch of good meetings set up. And so I think this was on a Thursday. We got there on a Monday, had amazing meetings all week. Like we probably had 20 coffees and meetings with
what we thought were amazing.
What we thought were amazing. Yeah,
exactly. They were fun meetings, right?
They were great meetings. And every single meeting ended the same way. We think what you guys are doing is great. You guys are solving a real problem. This is a market we're really interested in, right? And so we're like, oh, like we're doing fantastic. So we were in our second to last meeting, and it was in the middle of the day in San Francisco, and the sun came out for the first time all week, and we had a little bit of time to get to our last meeting with our last investor, so we decided to walk. So we walked, and somehow Google Maps took us up Telegraph Hill, like straight up Telegraph Hill. It was literally like, I don't know what climbing Everest
is like. Not knowing what it was at the time.
We had no idea.
Oh, okay.
So there was no elevation in Google Maps. So we're like huffing and puffing our way like up this hill in our suits and our laptop bags. And we get to this last meeting, and we're sitting down with this investor, and we're like up all the way, like walking up this mountain. We're like talking about like how well the meetings are going, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how easy it's been to like sell people on the fact that this is going to be a massive market. And we're like feeling really good about ourselves. And we sit down at our last meeting, and we like went into our pitch. We're like 10 minutes in, and the investor like interrupts us and just like flat out is like, "Hey, I think you guys are great, but I'm not investing." We're like, "Oh," like it was like so sudden and like so abrupt that we were like, "Okay, cool." I'm thinking to myself, "Well, that's cool. Like whatever. We have like 80 other investors like who are interested." And right about the time he's about to leave, he asks us, "How have your meeting with?" Because he knew we were meeting with other investors. "How have your meeting with other investors gone?" And Tony and I are like, "Oh, they've been going great. Like everyone's really interested in this market." And one of the last things he said before he left, he looked us in the eye. He's like, "Listen, like I told you guys no, like flat out. These other guys are telling you everything that's great about you or your company, but if they're not writing you a check, if they're not telling you yes, they're telling you no." And he left, and we were like so depressed. we're like sitting there, and we're like physically sore and like emotionally, I think, a little bit exhausted. We just climbed this mountain, and we're sitting there, and we're like ordering coffee and ordering food, and the fatigue of the moment, the irony of the moment was kind of lost on us at the time. But we were like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He wasn't in those meetings. And like the reason why we remember that piece of advice from that meeting is because it was by far the most true, right? And over time, not a single one of those investors came through. So
they kept telling us they loved us.
They
though,
kept
so
telling,
that
they
is
still
nice.
tell us they love us.
So that is nice. So that's nice.
So that was a really good lesson to learn. And to go to your original question, so we did raise money from family and friends, thank God for that. I think it's hard as a first or second time entrepreneur to raise capital, your initial round of capital from outside of your network, right? And good investors invest in teams, right? And it's tough to get to know a team in a 1-hour cold pitch meeting in someone's office. But I was fascinated by the statistics we found about what percentage of startups raise money from friends and family. It's crazy. It's really crazy. 38%.
Right.
Way higher than we thought. So.
But you guys are, you've not raised venture capital, right? But you've been able to raise your friends and family money and actually do something crazy like generate revenue. I mean, that's a crazy way to build a company, right?
Yeah.
With actual revenue. So around our community, right, everybody thinks that you have to go raise venture capital, and the mantra is, well, you can't raise it here, so you should just move to Silicon Valley, right? I'm not necessarily so sure personally that it's a lot easier to raise capital there. There's a lot more capital, but there's a lot more people competing for capital that are out there. So you guys elected to stay put. So what do you say to companies here that say, "Oh, I can't do it. I got to pack up and go"?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things there. Truthfully, I don't want to, a large reason we're staying here is because I think the place in life we are, right? I'm married. I have 3 kids. Jordan and Kara are married, right? They're expecting a child. We're, going to stay here. This is our home. We want to stay here. But I think your point is right. And I think our first story kind of points to that. It's easy. It's probably easier to get meetings out there, right? There's a lot more people to talk to, but you're also competing with a lot more. With our fundraising, we did raise friends and family money. We do have some revenue, not as much as we'd like. But our thought process has always been, raise as little as we need to keep us going, right? We don't need to. I think part of the mindset of a lot of companies, I think, and a lot of it is because of what gets talked about in the press, what gets, sort of the buzz and the excitement, is that sort of raising funds is the end, right? For us, it's the means to the ends, right?
Sure.
And I think we're going to need to raise more funds, and that's something we'll be looking at doing here and things. But I do think we've made a very conscious decision to raise only what we think we need to raise to keep us going. And ultimately, the goal is, I say this all the time, being a startup is great. I want to be a small business. I want to be a company that has revenue and is self-sustaining. And the quicker we get there, the better. Now, it's going to take some capital to get there. And so we did do friends and family fundraising. We'll probably do a little bit more. But that's not the focus. The focus is getting to the point where revenue is self-sustaining.
Plus, raising capital takes a lot of time.
Very much so. That's the other aspect that people don't realize. It's a big time commitment, right? And I think this is something too we realized. We tried to do it not try to do it, but we played with doing it, not all in, right? Because it was something that we didn't necessarily need, but we thought it might be nice. That's not the way you have to do it. You have to go all in. You have to make a conscious decision of raising funds, and all the time you're spending doing that is time you're spending not building your product, not building your business, right? And so there's a trade-off, and you have to make that decision.
So you mentioned a little bit, so I was going to ask you guys about family, right? So being an entrepreneur is not easy. You both have families. How has doing this impacted your personal life, and how understanding are your wives?
The most understanding.
Good answer. You have to ride back home with that.
Thank you.
I'm like,
No, but my wife is the most gracious human being I've ever met, and it's part of the reason why I married her. I said this. We were on a panel together at USF St. Pete at their entrepreneurship club a couple weeks ago. I was in a weird mood. I was in a very negative, don't ever start a startup mood.
One of those emotional roller coasters.
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think one of my first answers to one of the questions was do it while you're young. Startups are a young person's game, and I don't mean young in terms of age. I mean young in terms of stage of life, right? It was much easier for me to start my first company, even though we were married. We've been married almost 5 years, but we didn't have a child on the way, right? And that changes things, right? And it's tough. But I will say, I think a lot of people think that look at us and look at the success that we've had with Citizinvestor and think, oh my gosh, these guys these guys are typical startup founders. They never see their families. They work until 2 a.m. And at the risk of potential investors hearing this, that's not the case. We live pretty balanced lives. Tony and I work, maybe 50, maybe 60 hours a week. We're not working 100 hours a week. Our startups are not our life, and that's really important as our startup is not our number one priority, right? I think for Tony and I, we both prioritize our families over our startups, which is super hard and definitely leaves you at a disadvantage. I mean, but that's a trade-off. You have to recognize that that's a disadvantage, right? And embrace that and be okay with that. So.
And it's just, I mean, it's also how you do things, right? And I think that's actually been a very good aspect of us is that we both kind of have that mindset, and so we work similar hours. But I mean, I go to the office. I'm home every day by 5 o'clock, so I can do bath time and dinner time. That doesn't mean that once everyone goes to bed, I don't work at night. But but it means you make decisions about when you're doing things. So I think it is difficult, but I don't think it's it's not overcomable.
Yeah.
right. So as you're building out the company, right, you guys have a technical guy right now, more technical.
Yep.
How did you meet him? How did you find him?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay, so Tony, how did you find him?
Yeah. So we do have a third co-founder in DC who's not involved day to day in the business. He was my counterpart at Engage, which was the company I sold my first company to. And his name is Eric Rapprich. He's an amazing guy, amazing developer. And Eric and I sat down back in late last year and decided we need to bring on another developer to the team. And I think we found him on AngelList, actually. No, I'm sorry, no, it was Twitter. This guy, our developer is super active on Twitter. And he saw we just used hashtag PHP developer and found a developer. He's amazing. He's really great. It's a little tough for us. He is abroad, so the time change is very, very hard to work through. But it's worked for us. It's worked for us.
I can honestly say I don't think anybody's ever said they found their co-founder, a technical person on
I've never
Twitter.
heard of that either. I've never heard of that either. We got really lucky. So yeah. Not a lot of developers on Twitter. I don't know. It's weird.
So let's talk a little bit about mistakes, right? So there's always mistakes that we've made. So what are some of the biggest mistakes that you think you guys have made so far, and how did you deal with the damage control?
Good.
I think there's a lot. But
You can just pick
let's
one
go,
or two.
Yeah. How much time is there? No, I think so. There's interesting things, and I think if you want to talk about some of the starting stuff, but So part of my focus, right, part of my sphere is dealing with the sales side, right? So dealing with cities, and we made a decision in I think like November of last year. Now part of it was based on the data we had, right? So we reach out to people, we reach out to cities, and we basically have their contact information. So part of it was what contact information was available. But we made a decision to switch from reaching out to cities to reaching out to counties. Counties are larger, and we would reach out to a lot of cities. We thought this was a great way to do it. And for some reason, I don't know why I made this mistake, but instead of doing like some counties and some cities, we just went all in on going to counties. That was not very advantageous. So counties loved it, right? But the bureaucracy in counties, again, a great thing if Commissioner Sharp was here, but the bureaucracy in counties, because they don't have a mayor, typically, right? They don't have one centralized figure and an executive branch to make decisions. It's very difficult to get them to commit to anything. So we really lost, in my opinion, 3 to 4 months of outreach, and it dropped down. I mean, our growth rate definitely flattened, if not dipped a little, in that quarter because of that decision in county. So I think that was a big mistake. It's obviously something we've countered, and now we're doing mostly. It's still a little bit of counties, but almost exclusively cities, and our growth rates picked back up. But that was, I think, a big mistake.
It was a very big one. And that was not all Tony's mistake. We made that decision together, just to be clear. I think the other one happened a lot earlier, and I don't think it took us a long time to see the consequences of it. But in our shareholder agreements, we did not, how do I say this? We did not clearly define the expectations of each member of the team and what their involvement would be long term. And it was a massive mistake. And I'm not sure why we didn't do that. Maybe it was because the start of any startup is the most fun part, right? You're like wireframing and like choosing logo colors and like buying domain names. Like it's like super fun.
And you all love each other in the beginning.
And you all love each other in the beginning, right? And everything's good and everything's going to turn out great. And I say this to say, my wife and I were in DC this weekend, and we were hanging out with some other members of the team who were involved in this. So we still have really good relationships with these people. But we all collectively, I think, rushed through the really boring details at the start so that we could get to the fun stuff. And boy, did it cost us.
And I think part of that mistake was, I think part of it was unconscious in that we didn't really think it through, but also part of it was conscious. I think, when you're early, you have this assumption that success is going to come really quickly. Yeah. And so, our thought process was, so for our original developer and designer that were doing work and had some equity interest there that did invest, but was right on the start, it was tied to essentially building out the site on the front end, right? Building out the first piece. Because our assumption was it gets built out, and then very quickly thereafter we're successful and we'll have the, funds and whatever to hire people that we need and things like that. Right. And as that takes longer, but there's not really the incentive, on that side to keep going, then you're put in a position where without the success, you still have those needs. And so that was, I think, part of why that mistake was made. But.
So what do you guys think is the most important ingredient in being successful?
As soon as I'm successful in something other than getting my wife to marry me,
let me get back to you.
I will let you know.
I'll say, I've been thinking about this a lot, just because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, specifically a lot of young students who want to be entrepreneurs. And my advice is always, don't make your startup your life. I think having a healthy perspective of where your startup fits in the grand scheme of things is really healthy. And I think if your hope and your purpose is tied exclusively into your startup, you will be rocked emotionally from the highest highs to the lowest lows. And if it fails, you kind of have nothing left, and that's a really bad place to be. So that'd be.
And I would say too, without trying to make this even too much of a love fest up here, because if you were at the office, you would realize it's not. But for me, and again, this is my first really true startup, but just in other aspects of things I've done, I think talking to Jordan, having a co-founder, right? Having this relationship that not only you're able to work together well, but you also have different strengths, right? So, having Jordan's sort of discipline in a way that I don't necessarily know that I have, I think is really helped Citizinvestor be successful, right? I think having that strong team on the front end is really important.
So the diversity aspect of it really matters.
Yeah, having people who have different strengths and can work together to make those strengths.
But at the same time, and I would just echo what Tony says, I think the co-founder relationship is such an important one. I think the reason why I call Tony my startup spouse is I heard advice years ago that your co-founder at a startup, your business partner, is a lot like marriage. And having gone through this experience, like, I cannot agree with that more. And while diversity is good, diversity of strengths and complementary skills is great, I do think you need to have a lot in common with that person. I think when you're looking for a co-founder, you got to look for a lot of the same things you look for in a spouse, right? You know, when Tony and I started working on Citizinvestor, I don't think we consciously thought through these things. I think we just got lucky in that they all kind of lined up. But I didn't know Tony well, but I knew that he shared my values, right? My values of faith and family and hard work and solving problems in politics and government. And that was really important, right? Those are foundational things that if you're disagreeing with your business partner, it's going to make things tough. So I think the co-founder relationship can't be overstated. I don't understand, and I know people find their co-founders like this, and I'd love to sit down. Actually, if there's anyone here tonight that's done this, I'd love to sit down with you and talk to you about your experience doing it. I personally don't understand these finding random people that you don't know at all, right, to team up with to be business partners. I don't know if I could do that, but people do it and it works. So I don't know, but for me that's not wise. So.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys a couple more questions, and then we're going to go to a little rapid fire round,
Cool.
and I'll open up to questions for the group. So because you guys chose to stay here,
Yeah.
right, and one of the reasons I agreed to do this here was to kind of help with the community aspect of this. How do you think that we could make this community a better place for startups?
Hey, you're the politician.
I didn't ask for political rhetoric.
This community is great, but it can be greater.
We can make it better. Together.
I think I've seen, and again, I don't know that I'm the best person to speak to this because I'm very, inexperienced is my first startup. But I think there's been a lot of great forward momentum recently, right? So a lot of these type of events I think are great, right? I think Startup Weekend and all those types of things are really helping to build the community, right? I think that's what's important. People want to feel. It helps to feel that there are other people doing it. It helps to talk to people that are doing it. It helps to have those random interactions and to meet people and see success stories and hear what's going on and know what the next steps are. There's a lot of people who don't know what the next steps are of how to do something and to meet people. And I think building that community out in events like this and in other events that are going on is the best thing that we can do and to help the narrative, right? There's also, I think, a bad perception or bad narrative that happens, and I think that's partly because we don't always necessarily do a great job of telling our success stories or telling the things that are going on or highlighting things that are going on in the community, and I think that could help.
I'll just very briefly add, because you deserve a lot of credit in this. It's going to take incredibly successful and talented entrepreneurs like yourself planting yourself here and investing in this community, not to hone in on our core message. Invest in your community.
That's what I was supposed to say.
Yeah, you missed it.
Yeah.
I'm batting cleanup.
Thank
so I think that's a critical piece to it, and I've been so thankful as a Tampa native. I'm a 6th-generation Tampanian, for people like you and others in this room for playing yourselves here and investing in the startup community.
All right, so one last question before we go to the rapid fire. If you were me and you're sitting in this chair, what question would you ask? Oh, he's at a loss for words. That is never
No,
fun.
I know.
Good.
how much money would you like for me to invest in you? And then we'd say, no, I don't know. I mean, I think you touched on most of the I don't know, the questions.
It's such a
you
great-
do these
I know,
all the
I
time.
know.
What are the questions you normally get asked?
I
don't
know.
You have to stick one of those in there.
I would probably ask. I have no idea. Maybe you guys can think of something. I'm at a odd loss of words.
All right. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to do Tony first, and I'm going to ask him a set of questions, and I'm going to ask you a set of questions. So no in-depth thought, just first thing that pops in
That's
your
not
head,
going to be a
right?
problem. Yeah.
Okay. What's been your most satisfying moment in business?
My most satisfying moment in
business.
So, not in depth, but we have one particular project that I think is really, that's really been great is a project in Central Falls, Rhode Island. I'm originally from Rhode Island. I don't know why I'm speeding through this as if that's the point, but Central Falls was one of the only 5 cities in the country to go bankrupt. We did a project with them. We were one of their first partners after bankruptcy. And seeing the impact of that moment and the difference it made in the community, I think was really,
Cool.
one of the
All
most
right.
important.
What item do you own that you would never sell?
What item do I own that I would never sell? I was going to say something like family related, but that ownership, that would be a bad way to put that. Wow, I don't know. That's crazy. I'm not even wearing it. That's a terrible. He said wedding ring. I broke my finger the other day, and I'm not wearing it, so that'd be in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll pass. Maybe
All
I'll
right.
come back to it.
What's your favorite word?
That I can say here?
Yeah.
My favorite word is. Wow, I'm terrible at this. Impact.
Oh. All right.
I don't know if I've ever used that.
I've never heard Tony say the word impact.
I like it so much. I keep it bottled
Such a
up.
big
I don't
fan.
want to waste it. It's a
I know,
treasure.
it's a-
That's the
it's a
treasure.
gem.
Yeah.
So
It's
do
a
you
gem.
work better with pen?
I would say actually I would say transparent. That's what I would say. Yes, that's the one.
All right. Do you work better with pen and paper or digitally?
Digitally, but I think that's new. I think so. Jordan turned me on to Google Docs, which is this amazing thing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So I told you I was bad.
Showing your true
Yeah,
colors.
but yeah, I would say digitally now.
All right.
Usually at Buddy Brew.
What historical figure do you most admire?
What historical figure do I most admire? I would say. Oh, that's a hard one. I'd say Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
I'm kind of stealing that because I know that's
If we were-
Jordan's
if we were
I'm
favorite
not
playing-
asking him the
yeah,
question.
If we were
I know,
playing the
I know, but
Newlyweds
that
game,
is.
I would have gotten that
I know,
wrong.
yeah,
So
yeah.
What's the best compliment you can give to others?
That. I'd say that a person is genuine.
When's the last time you tried something new?
Last time I tried something new? Like an activity or anything?
Anything.
I don't know. Yeah, this is new. Thank
right,
you.
There you go. All right.
I'm dying here.
How about this one? If you could have the attribute of any animal, what would it be?
If I could have the attribute of any animal.
Be any animal. We'll go for anything.
Yes, I'd say a tiger. I'm a big tiger fan.
All right.
Yeah. My son's in a huge animal mood, so I'm like overwhelmed with animal facts right now.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
What profession, other than yours, would you like to attempt?
Well, I already attempted politics. It didn't go well. But I don't know that I don't have any faculty for it. We were talking about this the other day, but I'm fascinated by architecture.
Okay.
Yeah.
And lastly, what book has inspired you the most?
What book has? All right. Well, I'd say the Bible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
That
All right.
works.
So Jordan,
yes, gosh,
different set of
those were
questions.
I stole a couple of your answers.
Yeah,
and you
seriously, you did.
previewed them
No,
already.
I'm asking him different
Oh,
questions,
good,
so
okay.
there's no problem with that.
Good.
I
Easy.
purposely
Yeah.
chose not
Easy.
to ask him the ones that would be super easy for him.
Yeah.
Goodness. Okay. In one word, characterize your life as an entrepreneur.
Emotional.
What's your most unusual skill?
Unusual skill. Gosh, this is hard.
Yeah.
My most unusual skill, photography?
Okay.
I don't know, sure.
What's your favorite word?
My favorite word? Audacity. You do use that.
What is more important, strength, speed, or stamina?
Speed.
What's the best compliment that you can receive?
That I am humble, because I don't hear it a lot. That I'm humble. No,
Still waiting.
Who do you think is amazing at what they do?
Tony.
Okay. If you could have the attribute of any animal, what would it
Oh
be?
gosh. I should have been thinking through these. A Tyrannosaurus Rex in honor of Tony's son.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Excluding yours, what company or business do you admire the most?
Google.
What makes you happy?
My wife.
Awesome. Hey, give them a round of applause.
That was
guys.
quick. That one didn't take any time. That was good.
Cool. Awesome. So I'm open up for questions. So if you guys have any questions, go right ahead. Jump in.
Think back to a single event or a single person who most influenced the path of this startup. What was it and why?
Mine's sitting in here, Mark. If it wasn't for Mark, I would have never cared about politics or government, and that's been a central theme of my career. So, Mark.
Anything to add?
The Tampa voters who overwhelmingly didn't vote for me, which put me on the budget committee, which led
there
to
you go.
yeah.
Good.
All of you
There was a
played
lot
a
of
role.
a real lot. Yeah.
A slew of
He was
voters.
being told no a lot. Is that what he was telling you?
Yeah.
Like, okay. All right.
You guys started Philadelphia as your first project, right? Have you been able to come back to Florida and do anything here and get traction? And what were kind of the differences between the regions that really helped that happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have done some projects in Florida. Actually, we've done Florida's the state that we've done the most projects in. It's also the state where we've had the most failures. So our percentage is actually really bad in Florida. Not really bad, but comparatively bad. So I think, I don't know that it is a region thing, although we recently did a study, you can speak to this more, about the voting patterns of different areas in which we've had successful projects and not. What we do see, I will say, is a clumping effect. So as we have a project posted, or specifically a successful project, we see a lot of municipalities in that area. So we've had a lot in the Chicago area, we've had a lot in New England, we've had a lot around San Francisco, San Mateo County in that area, and we've had a decent amount in the sort of Tampa, Orlando area, although again, those ones have surprisingly been the least successful.
You seem to be somewhat proud of the fact that you've generated some revenues for the company. Could you discuss with us how you came up with a revenue model for your company, how that revenues are coming into the company, what is the feedback loop that you're using to tweak the revenue stream, and what do you see for a growth pattern in the future?
Yeah, good, very good questions. So I'll speak to model first, and when I get something wrong, step in. But when with model, it's very important for us when you're dealing with government. A big focus for us was to avoid procurement. That's a very difficult process. So what we do is we take 5%. We take
8% total, 5% goes to us, 3% goes to the credit card company. On top of the project cost $10,000. We put it on our site as $10,800. The things we do is one, it's 100% or nothing. We don't charge unless the project is successfully funded. When it is, the funds go directly from the user's credit card into an account set up on the front end by the city. So we never touch or hold the money at any point. It goes directly to them, which they really like. It's clean. And our funds, our fee is deposited into our account on the back end. So there's actually no exchange between the city and Citizinvestor, which is why we get to avoid procurement. We haven't had in the 24 cities we've been in, we've never had to do procurement. So that's sort of our model. I think the cities love that model. We only get our fee if the project's successfully funded. It doesn't come from city, it comes from the individuals donating, and there's no financial exchange between us and the city, so we avoid procurement. In terms of other revenue models, something that we're working on right currently is actually a white label product. So we did, the city of Boston did a participatory budgeting project. We built them out a white labeled version of a variation of Citizinvestor for them. And we've heard some feedback from some of our city partners and other cities that we've talked to that they'd be interested in that. That'd be a little bit of a different model. It'd be a upfront fee with a recurring yearly maintenance fee. And that's something we're working on now because we've had a lot of feedback on that.
What advice would you give to someone who's married and starting a company?
Kara? I think just what I've said over and over again tonight is your startup will come and go. Your spouse won't. So make sure that she is always taking precedence over your startup. And that's hard. It's very hard. And I haven't always been perfect at that. But I don't know if that's very practical, but that's the best piece of advice I can give.
Did you ever have doubts when you started? And if you did you ever get over that phase?
I didn't think it was going to work at all. Honestly, I really didn't.
That's true.
I really honestly didn't. So when Tony pitched me on the idea of Citizinvestor, I immediately saw the problem. Government doesn't have money. Right. Very easy to see. I didn't buy the solution that citizens were going to donate money above and beyond what they already pay in taxes to the government for government services, right? That's a crazy idea. Thankfully, I was wrong, right? Our success rate right now, I think, is at 68, 69% after Arlington.
Yeah.
68, 69%, which, granted, much smaller sample size, but compared to an Indiegogo with 30% or a Kickstarter with 44%, that's not bad, right? We're very, very proud of that. So, yeah, we had doubts. Thank you.
But I would add to that, this goes to the roller coaster. You have doubts every day, right? It's not like the doubts stop. I mean, it's, the original doubts were on whether people would be willing to do it or not, right? And I think we got to we were comfortable with proof of concept early. Now it's, can it scale? How many cities will do this? How big of a project can you do? Is it self-sustainable? And I think we'll continue to have doubts, right? I don't think you ever stop doing that, but you work through it, you get to the next step, then you get to the next step after that, and you just keep working.
And I think it's important to always have a healthy fear of startup death, right? Ben Horowitz talks a lot about this in his new book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, which is really great. It's kind of this constant fear. I wouldn't say fear is too strong of a word, but just having a healthy respect for your company can be gone tomorrow, right? There's nothing that guarantees that you're going to be around next week. And I think when you're in this early stage of a company, that's even more true, right? So.
You mentioned that you're reaching out to cities and counties and stuff like that. What is the percentage of projects that are started by citizens versus the ones started by cities? Initiatives.
Yeah, so all of the projects that raise dollars on our site come directly from the government entity themselves. Now we have a feature on the site called Ideas, which is where citizens can come forward and say, put forth ideas that they'd love to see in their community. And the idea being that we can convert those ideas from the government and they can post them then as a crowdfunding project. One of the commitments for us, and that's where we want to get to, right? We don't want to be a top-down. We want it to be coming from citizens. Part of the problem is it's not just dollars that are needed for projects. There needs to be government approval for the projects that we're doing, right? So it's one thing to raise the funds, but if you can't get the permit, or the city just says, I don't want to do it, then now you've raised, our commitment to our users is, if you get to the dollar figure that the project is, this project will go forward, right? If you raise the money, it will go forward. That's a commitment we make to them, which is different than a lot of other sites. And for that reason, they're coming from government. But that's something we're always trying to figure out is how we seamlessly get from the ideas phase to the project phase, yeah.
Hey, so other crowdfunding sites have had some really high-profile failures. Have you guys had any, and how have you dealt with them?
It's a really good question. No, we haven't yet. Now, again, very small sample size. We've had 30 projects across 24 cities. But I will say, I think a failure on our site would be a much bigger deal than a failure on one of those other sites. I think when you make government the project creator and you're asking citizens to give money to a government project, there's inherently more social accountability there, right? If the government fails to execute a project that they took money from citizens to do, that's going to be a PR nightmare, right? And we actually think that's a good thing, right? Like we think that makes government maybe just a tiny bit more accountable for that specific project. But thankfully, all of our government partners have been amazing. And actually, the opposite has happened for us, right? So, I think citizens see government as this distant, cold entity, right? That's kind of faceless, and they kind of disconnect from government. Almost all of our projects, probably because the projects have been so small, have been executed in an insane time frame. Like, there was a statue in Naperville, Illinois. It was a perfect story. During the government shutdown, during the federal government shutdown, right? Project gets funded, raised $77,000 on the site. Within 3 weeks, they had the statue, but they needed to build the pedestal where the statue was going to stand and do like landscaping and lighting to light up the statue. Got the money, executed the project in 3 weeks, dedicated the statue in the middle of the federal government shutdown. It was awesome. It was really awesome. And that's creating a really strong trust link between citizens and government that I don't think is possible to achieve as rapidly with any other kind of format. So.
Did you guys go into this with an exit scenario in mind? And has that changed as you've had more success?
So no, I mean, I'll speak for myself and the other thing. No, I mean, I actually, this is another one of my things besides people focusing too much on fundraising. I think I think it's always good to know, especially when you're talking to investors, right? You have to know, what potential exits are, here's where we get to revenue, or here's where we think. I think building a company with the idea of selling it is a bad way to build a company. I think you make bad decisions. I think you make short-term decisions. And our idea has always been that this is a company that we want to see grow and have long-term success. Now, as that happens, right, you talk to companies and, people we have partnerships with. It's something that, we'd be open to doing, right? We're not like, well, we'll never sell, we'll never have an exit. But it's not something that we think about or we build towards, because I think when you're doing that, you're doing a disservice to the long-term growth of your company.
I think it's important to remember too, like the best startups don't sell, the worst startups don't sell, right? Somewhere in the middle, right? Startups sell. So obviously, we're always striving to be one of the best startups. So.
Question about entrepreneurship. I'm assuming you guys have another source of income. Like how do you, what do you suggest as an advice for people that want to be entrepreneurs? So you want to save for a year and then jump in the water, or how do you go about that? And my second question is, when do you call yourself successful? Is it, you in a year you made this much money, or are you happy with, you have a pretty admirable, motto. So are you happy with just creating great things for the cities and never making money? How do you define success?
Yeah, so a couple things. Yeah, I mean, so we have, I think I'm lucky I think both of us are lucky in what we do. So I'm an attorney. I've been able to, now, extremely scaled down, right? My time is focused on Citizinvestor, but I do maintain a couple clients that I have. So it gives me the flexibility to do this. Not everyone has that situation, right? Sometimes it's just you have to work on nights and weekends until you're at a point where you don't have to do that. It's different for everyone. For me, that's been the opportunity. I think on the successful side, yeah, I mean, I think there's success in getting to see the impact we have. I mentioned the Central Falls story, Jordan mentioned Naperville. There's been a lot of these stories that are individual successes and things that we can be really proud of, right? We're not a successful company yet, right? We're not, we're not self-sustainable, right? We're not at the growth we'd like to see, right? So we're always striving. I don't know if there's a point I'd say we're successful. I'd say, we're always trying to get there. But there's a difference between the individual successes and the things we're proud of than, how we see ourselves. I think we're always striving to get better.
I think there's different sticks in the sand. What am I saying? There are different milestones of success. And I think we've certainly hit some of them. Like for me, getting one project funded. Didn't think that was going to happen. So that was successful. But I think for any startup, the metric of success has to be being a self-sustaining company and not being a startup anymore, right? We're infatuated by startups, but startups exist to become self-sustaining businesses, right? So I think that is one of the biggest measures of success, and we're not there yet. So by that measure, no, we're not.
Yeah, so when are you okay going 20 years doing the same thing and not making any money, or what? Are you happy with? I'm assuming you're happy with what you're doing. Obviously, it's great stuff.
My wife Shirley wouldn't be happy with us going 20 years and not making it. No, I mean that's a decision. Those are decisions you're constantly making, right? You're constantly making how much. Where are we going? Where are we on the growth chart? How is it worth it? I think it helps that we're having an impact, right? I think if we weren't, if you're not having an impact, the decision about how long can you go without, being self-sustaining or making a large profit, I think is shortened. I think because we're having the impact that we like to see. I've used impact 4 times, but
that's good.
I think that helps, but no, I mean we always want to grow faster. We're not growing as fast as we want to be. We want to grow at a faster rate and get to that self-sustaining point and then get to the beyond self-sustaining, get to a point where we're making crazy profits.
So you're a crowdfunding platform, and there's an important piece of legislation that has yet to be decided on, regulation crowdfunding. So I'd like to hear your legal and your political opinion about the importance of this regulation being passed and its potential in changing crowdfunding from being a movement to a method for the common man to invest.
Yeah, I think so. A couple things. So one, just very narrowly, the crowdfunding legislation that's been being waited for the SEC to rule on doesn't affect us necessarily, right? So, or not at all. So it doesn't affect Citizinvestor. That being said, taking that hat off and just generally, I think it's. I think the rules about investing, I don't know if I'm going to interrupt. I think the rules about investing are asinine, right? I think we let people put money into stock market, we let people put in money into all these other things, but we don't let them invest because we don't trust them, because if you don't have $1 million, you're dumb. And I think that's crazy. That being said, I don't know that crowdfunding is right for all companies, right? I think it's, putting that many people on your cap table is going to make it very difficult to raise money later. And there's a variety of things. I don't know that we as a company would want. This is probably not good to say, but I don't know that would be the best route for raising money, but I think it should be done. I think it's to give individuals that opportunity to invest in companies is the natural progression and should happen sooner than later.
Yes, so I have a 1.5-year-old boy, and we always go to this park right down the street from my house. So the playground at this park is really old, and it has metal pieces jutting out, and I won't let him play on it, right? But he doesn't understand, right? Because he's 1.5. So if I wanted to, say, get a new playground installed at my park, the method I would do would be to go to your site and sort of fill out your form, whatever, and go get people to help donate money to this. Now, does this involve you actually going and sitting down with my city mayor to make this thing happen? And if so, doesn't that cause some sort of scalability issue?
So real quick, and jump in. I'm here. So
you're good.
So you actually wouldn't be able to post a project just as an individual that would raise money. What you could do is you could go to the site right now. You can go to Citizinvestor. You could post your idea, right? You could get a bunch of people in your community to support that idea, to like the idea is actually what it says. It'll record how many people like it, with the idea being to get the attention of your someone in your city, right? To be able to come forward and say, yeah, that's a really great idea, right? We want to do that as a project. Now, your question about scalability is a good question. This is part of something that we're constantly doing and we're building on the back end, is a way to get those ideas to seamlessly convert into projects by government entities, right? So, but you can't, on your own, you can't raise the dollars. It would need to get to someone in City Hall who would convert it into a project.
All right, I just had one follow-up.
Yeah.
question real fast. Now, say if, I'm not a politician or a lawyer, but this is probably where you
That's a
come
good
down
thing.
here.
Well,
Yeah. What if I created my own Citizinvestor or whatever?
Yeah.
It didn't go through the politicians, and I generated money for this project, my new place set at the park, and I went up to City Hall, said, here's the money.
Yeah.
I want to build this, and I had 100 people who also donated behind me.
Yeah.
You know, could something like, you know, if there's a politician, how could you turn something like that down?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know. No, I think that they're always looking for money. Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point. You know, for us, there are, and I don't think that's wrong, right? You know, if someone wants to go raise money for a project and take it to, you know, City Hall or County Commission and say, hey, we've raised these dollars, we want this project to go forward, that's great. For us, that's not our model because there's no guarantee that they're going to say yes, right? I know it sounds like they would always say yes, but there's a million things. Maybe you didn't, you know, maybe the permitting wasn't there, or maybe you can't actually, you know, use that for what you want it to do. Maybe the money you raise wouldn't make it ADA acceptable, whatever the reasons are, right? And so now you've collected money from users, and there's no guarantee that it's going to go forward. That being said, I think that's great. Like I love, you know, from outside of what our core business is, I love seeing, you know, individuals in the community want to, you know, invest in their community. It's a way that's done outside of Citizinvestor, but it's still great.
I was saying it's much more risky, but the scalability is infinite, right? Because then anybody could just, I could go start up this thing and go get community involvement and have it done without, you know, you actually having to go sit down with the mayor or whatever.
So one more, and then I'm gonna the guys will stay and answer questions, but I'll cut off the filmings. Go ahead.
Hey, so you're both obviously very politically involved. Have there been any cases where your own personal politics have kind of gotten in the way? And if so, how have you dealt with them?
Do you want to tell the
Yeah.
Portland story?
So, so one of our first calls was at the city of Portland, and this is like before we even launched. It was like literally like our second call with the city, second or third call with the city.
Yeah.
And we got on the line, and Tony and I are like in my conference room, hovering over my iPhone, and literally like the first thing they said was like, hey guys, thanks for taking the time to chat. So we Googled you guys, and you're political operatives. And it was like silence. It was like, we weren't sure if it was a question or not. I was like, yep. And they're like, and you're Republicans. And Tony's like, yep, we're Republicans. And they're like, okay, it was like super awkward. They were like, okay, so if the city of Portland, notoriously liberal, wants to post a project to crowdfund a needle exchange program, you guys are cool with that, right? And we're like, yeah, sure, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. And all of our Republican friends cringed. So we've been able to separate our politics from the business, and I think we've done a really good job. And I think by not hiding the ball on who we are, like Tony and I hosted a fundraiser for Adam Putnam here at Oxford Exchange a couple weeks ago, who's a Republican lawmaker, right? Like we're not like hiding who we are politically, and I think because of that, it's been a non-issue. Like that was literally the only time we've had somebody bring it up in a meeting, and in fact, like it's actually won us a few fans, right? Like I think people who are like, oh my God, it's like Republicans are doing like a civic startup. Like, and I think like Citizinvestor sits at this really perfect middle ground politically, right? Liberals love us because they see Citizinvestor as voluntary liberalism. You want to pay more taxes? Here's your opportunity, right? Conservatives love us because we're giving citizens more control over where government spends their money, right? And I think that's something we both like really, really enjoy about this, about doing less politics and focusing on solving a real problem that isn't really being solved in the political institutions.
And,
what's that?
yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Hey guys, thanks very much for coming. The guys will stick around to answer any questions you have. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Great job.